And now for the latest 5-day Accu-Weather solar system forecast, we turn to our cosmological prognosticator, Pluto Mars. Hey Pluto, I hope you have another sunny forecast for us, right?
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. Well, a lot's happening in this portion of the Milky Way galaxy for a Thursday. The weather in the week ahead is going to be, well, out of this world. So let's get started. Sorry about that.
I sometimes forget. So my 5-day solar system Accu-Weather forecast calls for a sunny and seasonably hot weather on the surface of the sun with a high temperature of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that's about normal for this time of year, unless there's a solar flare, of course. Temperatures are forecast to be somewhat cooler as you head further away from the sun. If you're planning a trip to Neptune, well, you're going to want a winter coat. But let's start a bit closer to home with Mercury. Today's weather on Mercury, and I use the word weather loosely since technically Mercury has no atmosphere. Well, the weather calls for intense radiation and scattered plasma tornadoes. On the dark side of the planet, lows will be minus 275 degrees Fahrenheit, but if you're going to be on the side facing the sun, you can expect high temperatures topping out at around 840 degrees. Now that may be a bit toasty for some of our fans of planet Earth, but for Mercury, that's actually quite seasonable for winter time. Moving a bit closer to our home planet, Venus is in for some nasty weather this week. As is typical for this portion of its orbital journey, Venus maintains its consistent and perpetual cloud cover with a somewhat uncomfortable high degree of 870 degrees Fahrenheit and a low of, well, 870 degrees Fahrenheit. And look for late afternoon lava showers in the southern hemisphere. And for the next 24 hours, if you're anywhere near Venus's equator, I suggest staying indoors unless you absolutely have to go out. That's because there's a storm watch for this evening calling for scattered showers of sulfuric acid. Atmospheric pressure stands at 1,350 pounds per square inch, so be sure your Venetian vacation venue is adequately pressurized to avoid being pulverized within seconds from the bone-splitting pressure. Another reason you might not want to venture outside this week on the Venetian surface is due to another expected spike in greenhouse emissions caused by larger than normal levels of CO2 trapped in the planet's thick atmosphere. And thanks to global temperatures consistently in excess of 800 degrees Fahrenheit, it looks like, well, any remaining liquid on the oceans will be completely boiled off again for the 4th billionth year in a row. So if you were looking for some oceanfront property on the Morningstar planet, my advice is to hold off for another millennium or two. Turning our telescope to Mars, I'm calling for equatorial highs to reach an unseasonably comfortable 80 degrees Fahrenheit tomorrow. But before you start packing your bathing suit, I should warn you that the lows on the red planet will drop to minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, you might want to pack a few layers of yakskin fur coats just to be safe. And if you suffer from asthma, I recommend staying indoors because there's a planetary dust storm watch in effect as well. Now, looking at the big kahuna in our solar system, Jupiter once again is experiencing back-to-back hurricanes. A level 9.9 lightning alert has been issued by NASA, so be sure to avoid lower elevations, by which I mean anything near the core of this gaseous giant, as temperatures are expected to reach 43,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Intense radiation emissions will continue at the northern latitudes. In fact, radiation in general this time of year is 1,800 times that of the Earth. So before you head out on a day trip exploring the Jovian planet, I strongly recommend packing some extra Jupiter sunscreen. I recommend protection level 500 or greater just to be on the safe side. And while you're at it, don't forget your spacesuit helmet. I never leave Earth without mine. A special advisory has been issued for Jupiter's moon Europa. It appears that water geysers have been detected in its southern hemisphere. Divers are advised to remain at least 500 miles away from these zones as the tumultuous currents could result in being ejected into deep space. Well, that would be a horrible way to end your European vacation, eh, Brad? Get it? Because the moon is called Europa? I love space jokes. Well, if your travel plans call for a trip to the ringed planet, a reminder to avoid attempting to go for a stroll while visiting Saturn. If you tried to walk on its gaseous surface, you'd literally begin a long, perilous descent into the planet, experiencing unpleasantly high lethal temperatures and body compacting pressures until you were crushed to the size of a walnut as you approach the planet's core. Hey, Brett, I can just picture you the size of a walnut. Then I could take you, man. If you have a hankering to explore the outer boundaries of our solar system, Uranus or Neptune, be sure to take along a few books because, well, in its closest orbit, Uranus is 1.6 billion miles from Earth and typically closer to 2 billion. And given the current state of space travel technology, travel time to Uranus is estimated to take about 3 years. And during your stopover on Neptune, you probably should eliminate its astronomically famous Great Dark Spot from your tour itinerary. And that's because the Great Dark Spot, which is actually the size of Earth, is expecting breezy conditions for the next 5 days, with wind gusts topping out at over 1,500 miles per hour by Thursday. That would be a new wind speed record for planets in our entire solar system. So good luck holding onto your hat or surviving. And if you're one of those people who still believes Pluto is a planet, I'm pleased to report that spring is right around the corner, by which I mean it should arrive on the dwarf planet in just under 60 years, which should give you plenty of time to work on your travel arrangements and updating your will. For you adventure seekers, just a friendly reminder that the methane lakes on Saturn's moon Titan offer a unique choice for boaters, if you don't mind the devastatingly toxic fumes. Don't forget to pack your chemical safety goggles, face shield, and CM7M military-grade gas mask before you leave shore. And now, just a few other weather reminders. If you're planning a pleasure trip to Mars's polar ice caps, remember that radiation suits are now mandatory when you're not confined to a NASA-approved sealed facility. Don't make that mistake that my neighbor Ralph made. Oh gosh. Silly Ralph. He forgot his radiation suit and burned to a crisp in under a minute. Crazy dude, that Ralph was. But I always knew he'd never live to see his 40th birthday. Finally, don't forget about tomorrow's lunar eclipse on Jupiter's moon Ganymede. Should be quite the sight to see if you happen to be anywhere near the surface of Jupiter. Unfortunately for me, I'll still be stuck in Seattle traffic, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to miss it. Well, that's it for the weather, and now let me beam you back to the planet Earth and Lenny Johnson with sports. Hey, Lenny, are my Seattle Mariners going to have a bullpen this year? Tell me. Today's solar system forecast has been brought to you by View from the Bleachers. Visit viewfromthebleachers.net, which invites you to learn more about Tim Jones and check out any one of his more than 500 humor articles. His humor is out of this world.